One man stares across this plain at an empire of 1,000,000 soldiers. He is 32. He has never lost a battle. He never will. In 10 years, he conquered most of the known world. Then, at the height of his power, he simply stopped breathing. This is the story of the boy who refused to accept limits. And how, in a single decade, he changed the world forever. But first, a question no one has fully answered. How did one young king conquer an empire 50 times his size? The answer begins in a small, violent kingdom in the north. For centuries, Macedonia was the joke of the Greek world. Backward, divided, forever bleeding from civil war and invasion. Then one man dragged it out of the dark. His name was Philip. Philip rebuilt the army from nothing into a killing machine. "16-foot pikes, a wall no infantry on earth could break." And into this kingdom of wolves, in 356, a son was born. His mother Olympias told him a god was his true father. That he was descended from Achilles, that he was meant for greatness. Alexander grew up believing he was something more than human. At 12, he did something no grown horseman could. A horse so wild no man could mount it. They called him Bucephalus. Alexander noticed the horse feared only its own shadow. He turned it toward the sun and rode it. The crowd went silent. His father wept. "Find a kingdom worthy of you," Philip said. "Macedonia is too small to hold you." He had no idea how right he was. To shape his mind, Philip hired the greatest thinker alive. Aristotle, who taught him medicine, philosophy, and the hunger to know. Alexander slept with two things beneath his pillow: a dagger and a copy of Homer's Iliad. He wanted to be Achilles reborn. He memorized every battle, every hero, every glorious death. By 18, he was no longer a student. He was a soldier. – 336 BC. Philip is at the peak of his power. Greece bows to him. He walks into the theater alone to show he needs no gods. Then one of his own bodyguards steps forward with a dagger. Philip dies on the stone in front of all of Greece. In a single afternoon, the boy becomes king. He is 20. And everyone, friend and enemy, expects him to fail. The whole empire his father built begins to crack apart. Greece revolts. The tribes in the north rise. Persia funds his enemies. Most kings would consolidate. Alexander did the opposite. He marched north and crushed the tribes before they could unite. Then word spread south. The boy king is dead in the mountains. The great city of Thebes rose in open rebellion, a fatal mistake. Alexander appeared at their gates in 13 days. Impossible speed. He offered peace. Thebes refused, so he made an example of them. Thebes was stormed, burned, erased from the map almost completely. 30,000 sold into slavery. The message to Greece was clear. Resist this king, and your city ceases to exist. He spared only the temples and the house of one dead poet. Greece fell silent. No one would challenge him again. They named him commander of all Greek forces. Now he looked east. Across the sea lay the richest empire the world had ever seen. 334 BC, Alexander leads 35,000 men across the sea against an empire of millions with treasure beyond imagining. As his ship neared land, he hurled a spear into the sand. He claimed all of Asia as a gift from the gods by right of conquest. First, he visited the ruins of Troy, the home of his hero Achilles. He laid a wreath on Achilles' tomb and ran the course in armor. To Alexander, this was not war. It was destiny, written long ago. But the Persians were waiting at a muddy river called the Granicus. Steep banks, fast water, the Persians held every advantage. His generals begged him to wait until morning. He refused. "I would be ashamed," he said, "after crossing a sea, to fear a stream." He led the charge himself straight into the river. The plumed helmet made him a target. Every Persian wanted his head. A Persian axe split his helmet. The blade nearly reached his skull. An inch from death until a comrade cut the attacker down. The Persian line broke. The first great victory was his. He sent 300 captured suits of armor home to Athens. The inscription, "From Alexander and the Greeks, except the Spartans." Western Asia Minor lay open. City after city opened its gates. He freed the Greek cities and left them to govern themselves. Then came the strangest challenge of the entire campaign. In Gordium stood an ancient wagon tied with an impossible knot. The prophecy, whoever untied it would rule all of Asia. For centuries, no one had managed it. Alexander studied it briefly. Then he drew his sword and cut it clean in half. "It makes no difference how it is loosed," he said. That night, a violent storm broke. The priests called it a sign. Meanwhile, the Persian king finally took the threat seriously. Darius III, King of Kings, ruler of 100 nations. He gathered an army so vast it could not be counted. Then he made a fatal choice to fight in a narrow place. At Issus, the mountains and the sea pinned his huge army in place. His numbers meant nothing. Alexander saw it instantly. He aimed his charge at one target only, Darius himself. Cut off the head, he believed, and the whole body dies. The companion cavalry drove a wedge straight through the line. Soon Alexander could see Darius close enough to kill. And the King of Kings did the unthinkable. He ran. The most powerful man on earth fled before a 23-year-old. When the king runs, the army dies. Tens of thousands fell. In his haste, Darius left behind his mother, his wife, his children. Alexander treated them with honor. It stunned the Persian world. He wanted to rule Persia, not just burn it, a conqueror, not a destroyer. Darius sent letters begging for peace, land, gold, his daughter. Alexander's reply, "I am now Lord of all Asia. Come and ask me." One city dared to defy him, the island fortress of Tyre. Half a mile of open sea protected it. They thought it impregnable. So Alexander did the impossible. He built a road across the sea. For 7 months they fought. Siege towers, fire ships, sea walls. When the walls finally fell, his fury was terrible. Tyre was destroyed. The lesson held: resistance was suicide. That causeway still exists today. Alexander reshaped the coastline. Then he turned to Egypt, and they welcomed him as a liberator. The Egyptians hated their Persian rulers. Alexander freed them. They crowned him Pharaoh, son of the gods, a living deity. On the coast, he founded a city and named it after himself. Alexandria. It would become the greatest city of the ancient world. But Alexander wanted something more. He wanted the truth about himself. He marched into the desert to a remote oracle at Siwa. They nearly died of thirst. Legends say ravens led them to water. At the oracle, the priest greeted him as the son of a god. What was said inside, he never told a living soul. But he left convinced of it. He was the son of Zeus Ammon. From that day, he believed no mortal limit applied to him. And only one thing now stood between him and an empire, Darius. Somewhere to the east, the King of Kings was raising a final army. (331 BC), the final battle. Darius chose the ground himself. A flat plain where his 1,000,000 men could surround the Macedonians. He even fielded scythed chariots, blades spinning on the wheels. Alexander was outnumbered at least 5-1, maybe far more. The night before, his generals urged a surprise attack in the dark. "I will not steal a victory," he said. Then he slept deeply. His plan was madness. He would deliberately pull the line apart. He marched his right wing sideways, dragging the Persians with him. And slowly, a gap opened in the Persian center, the one he wanted. He formed his cavalry into a giant wedge and aimed it like a spear. Straight at Darius, again, the same terror as Issus. And again the King of Kings turned and fled the field. The greatest empire in history shattered in an afternoon. Alexander was now, by right of the sword, Lord of Asia. Babylon opened its gates and welcomed him with garlands and gold. Then Susa, and treasure beyond anything the Greeks had imagined. Finally, Bucephalus, the sacred heart of the Persian Empire. Here he found the throne of the kings he had toppled. And then, one night, the greatest palace in the world burned. Drunken revenge, cold policy, historians still argue today. Either way, 200 years of Persian glory turned to ash. Only Darius remained, a king without a kingdom running east. When Alexander found him, Darius was already dead, betrayed by his own. Alexander covered him in his own cloak. The war for Persia was over. He could have stopped. He had won everything. He did not stop. Three brutal years chasing rebels through deserts and mountains. The campaign changed him. He began to dress as a Persian king. He took Persian customs, Persian courtiers, and a Persian wife. Roxana, a Bactrian princess. They said he married her for love. His old Macedonians grumbled. Their king was becoming a foreigner. Some plotted against him. He answered with executions and fear. In a drunken rage, he killed a man who had saved his life. He wept for days, but the conquest did not stop. East, always east. (327 BC). He crossed into India, a world of jungles and war elephants. At the Hellespont river waited King Porus and 200 elephants. The river was swollen with monsoon rain. Crossing seemed impossible. So he tricked Porus, fainting for weeks, then crossing in a storm. The elephants were terrifying. They trampled and gored his men. But the pikes turned the beasts. Maddened, they crushed their own side. Porus fought to the last, wounded again and again on his elephant. Alexander asked how he wished to be treated. "Like a king," Porus said. Alexander gave him back his kingdom. He admired courage above all. In the battle, his beloved horse Bucephalus died of his wounds. He founded a city and named it for the horse he loved. Then, at last, the army refused to take another step. "8 years from home, they had conquered the world. It was enough." For the first time, Alexander gave an order, and no one obeyed. He turned back, but he chose the cruelest road home, the desert. The march through the Gedrosian desert killed thousands, maybe most. They say he poured out his own water rather than drink alone. Back in Babylon, he planned new conquests: Arabia, the Western Sea. Then, in June of 323 BC, after a banquet, a fever took hold. For 12 days the fever climbed. The greatest doctors could do nothing. His soldiers filed past his bed in silence, one by one, weeping. They asked to whom he left his empire. "To the strongest," he whispered. On June 10th, 323 BC, Alexander died. He was 32. He left no clear heir, no instructions, only the largest empire ever. Within a generation, his generals tore it apart in endless war. His wife and son were murdered, his bloodline erased entirely. Everything he built as one empire shattered, and yet it survived. His cities spread Greek language, art and ideas from Egypt to India. Alexandria became the mind of the ancient world, its library, its lighthouse. Today, more than 2,000 years later, we still know his name. Not because he conquered the world, because he refused to believe it had an edge. History doesn't repeat itself, but it remembers the ones who reached too far.